Hey Computer, Play About Bees podcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back again to another episode of About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity. I'm Ron Miksa, and I'm here with...
Bidzina.
You forgot your name there, Bidzina.
Yeah, that's...
And we have two really great special guests today. That's right. I told you where they're from. Do you remember?
I believe I'm going to try to mix this up, but Monica's in Florida and Ted's in Arizona.
Okay.
Way around. Although they're right.
Okay. You knew that. I know you knew that. Yeah. Yeah. So Monica is in Arizona. Ted is in Florida. I'm in Calgary. Bidzina's in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And why we brought Monica and Ted in here today is that they are brother and sister. And even though one is in Arizona and the other is in Florida, they are both deeply involved in bees, which is a family thing. Their father and mother were beekeepers for almost a century now. And almost a century now. Yeah. And before that, your father's father, your grandfather, was also a beekeeper. So let's see what we can learn from people who grew up in a beekeeping family, if they think it was a good thing or a bad thing, and a little bit about their background and their history. And Bidzina, we're just going to kind of focus on that today. In the future, I'm hoping we can get Monica back to talk about beekeeping in Arizona. And Monica, what are some of the things you do? We're not going to go into great detail because I'm hoping we can just have an episode about you and what your work is. But I think for background, so people know that you have experience in bees.
After working on the family farm and then moving out to Arizona, I tried to raise some queen bees, but that couldn't happen because of our Africanized genetics in our area. So I switched to doing bee removals, and now my specialty is education and requeening Africanized bees.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that gets you out in the public quite a bit.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so you're not a hermit beekeeper in Arizona. You're out there, and you're close to what city?
Tucson.
You're near Tucson.
Tucson.
You like it down there?
I do. I do. I really enjoy the area.
Yeah. And Ted, hi. And yeah, Bidzina, did you have an...
Ted, that was Ted floors. This floor is for Ted right now.
Oh, I'm a third generation beekeeper. Been with my dad most of my life, and on the family with my mom as well. I did try other things besides beekeeping for about 1 to 2 years, and there was nothing else like it. I came back, and that was just a little bit after I graduated, and I've been with the farm ever since.
So you've been with it for over 20 years yourself.
Yeah.
And as your father and mother are aging, as we all do, including me, then you're taking a bigger and bigger role in the everyday management.
Yeah, I'm manager here at Miksa Honey Farms. We produce last year we produced about 18,000 mated queens, and to produce those mated queens and to sell the queen cells, that takes the business to be lucrative. It's roughly about between 250 to 300,000 queen cells to manage all those hives and sales. But
that's
other than that,
not 20,000, not 2,000, not 20,000.
We're in 100,000. Yeah, we're over
200,000 queen cells that you have to produce.
Yeah.
So just for the grafting alone for those 18,000 queens, or is it 12,000?
It's 18,000 mated queens.
So that's 25,000 little dips into the larvae and transporting them and putting them into the cell cups. Minimal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Minimal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of different numbers in there.
I definitely want to get you back again too. You'll be just as interesting as your sister, and probably more informative, a lot more knowledgeable than she. And
In different
Totally.
aspects.
And
In
he's
different
got
aspects.
better memory too.
and he does have a better memory.
Hey, I have long-term memory, but if you come over here, I couldn't find where I put down my Hive tool last fucking minute. So
Well, that's why they paint them bright colors so you can't find it again. Yeah. Okay. And I think, Bezina, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off this time, but I do want to open up with one side thing that needs to be mentioned up front here is I've known these two people for all their lives because I'm their crazy Uncle Ron. And their father is my older brother. So there we have it. Now it's all in the family.
Yeah.
Except you, Bezina, you're an outsider, but that's great. We need those two.
Well, I was thinking, I'm like, hey, that's looks like similar to Ron's last name, and
Similar.
yeah, similar, yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe I could be.
They had to change their. What's that?
No. When you were saying the outsider thing, maybe I could be the consigliere to the Godfather family. The half Irish, half Italian.
Yeah, and 100% Georgian.
Yeah.
Mhm. Does the country of Georgia have mafia people too?
They probably do.
Okay, you know they do. You're just not. You just can't talk about it. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, Bezina, these two people are about the best beekeepers you could find, and their backgrounds are so different, even though they came from the same family. The backgrounds currently and what kind of work they do with bees. So I think this is going to be a fun chat. I don't want to call it an interview. It's not an interview. And we're going to throw out a lot of odd questions that they can just pass on answering. And I always depend on you, Bezina, to come up with the weird questions. So whatever you think of, yeah, Ted's nodding. You've listened to the podcast, haven't you? Yeah. And you guys are some of the ones who have written to me directly to say, why is that guy on there with you, Ron? And I always defend you, Bezina. I always do it because I say, with Bezina there, we get questions that I would never think of. So that's part of your job here.
Think of me like a bee on the wall, but like a little bee on the wall, like a fly on the wall. But I'd like to think myself like a bee.
Yeah, not a fly, because we would kill that right away.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I think I do an awful lot of talking, and it's hard to shut me up, but you guys are here to be interviewed or talked to or chat about and chat with. So I would like you to kind of decide who wants to just start chatting. The one with the better memory maybe is a good place to start. And we were going to start a bit with your family history. Like, where did these people come from?
So I guess we can probably go with a little bit more that Monica's actually the oldest of six, and I'm the oldest boy of the six.
Of six. Six what?
Of six. So six
what?
siblings.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
6 kids.
Okay, I've got
Really-
four.
really
I have
cool.
4 kids.
As far as
So
what I can remember, there are six.
yeah.
But going backwards from there, where we stand, our standpoint in the family, if we go backwards, Mom and Dad met in Wisconsin back in the 70s. I believe it was the 70s. Actually, I have some notes from my dad that he gave me before I went to a meeting in December, and there's some pretty good stuff in here if we touch base on some of this. But that's where our parents met. But prior to that, Dad came from Western Pennsylvania, grew up he was the oldest of 10 children. His dad started having bees about 1936 was the first hive was bought. From there, I guess there wasn't any more beekeeping prior to that in our family. I don't think our great grandfather Ivan Didn't want to have anything to do with the bees, I don't believe. He was more of a dairy farm and truck farming.
That's like my brother. My brother names I brother him. Yeah, and he doesn't want to do anything to do with beekeeping.
Maybe it's Ivan's, just something with Ivan.
Something with the name Ivan, I guess. Either that or, in Benzina's case, it could be that your brother just doesn't want to have anything to do with what you're doing.
Well, that's maybe we like to kind of steer. Well, he would always try to get me involved in airplanes, but you're right. Maybe that's something to do with that too.
Okay, I'm just pulling your chain a little bit. So 10 kids in your father's family, and I would know about that because I was a middle child in that group, just like you are, Ted. You're a middle child in your
About
group.
middle. I am about middle, yeah.
Yep. And let's face it, the middle child is always the one that's the smartest and the most, like, you just have to balance the dynamics of the whole family and just kind of keep everything. It's like juggling all those egos.
Juggling. There is juggling. Yeah, there is. I can agree with some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That's the role. That's the we've got. Yeah. So 1936, almost 100 years ago.
Almost, yes, exactly.
And that's when Grandpa Andy started with his first bees, and he lived in Western Pennsylvania. I don't think he went to school beyond about grade 8, I think. Is that about
I've
right?
heard that too. I believe that's right.
Mm-hmm.
He got up to 1,200 hives by the 1940s.
Oh, wow.
Leslie, he got to 1,200 hives. That's a big outfit for back then. I did a lot of pollination for apple pollination in Pennsylvania. Did a lot of clover and what else was up there that's really good in the fall time?
Goldenrod.
Goldenrod. There you go. Yes, goldenrod. But bees were dying on him, started dying on him just like they do nowadays. So they call it the CCD of the time. And they tried to migrate to South Carolina, I think it was, to see if the bees would last the winter time. Maybe it was Eczema problems or something like that, but it still wasn't far enough south. I think it was, I probably can find it in my notes too from Dad. Heavy winter loss in 1950s. CCD, yep, about what I said, but 1955, we moved to Florida. Because it actually ended up being for buildup for the temperature difference between the Carolinas and Florida was about 10 more days of early buildup for the bees to get better, healthier, and more population to go back up to Pennsylvania. So I guess that's kind of how they found their roots down here in Florida is to migrate for the health of the bees.
So it was all the way back to the mid 1950s that he was taking bees down there?
It looks like with Dad's notes, it was 1955. Florida was 10 days earlier. Needed a place to put hive to a bought Florida house, wintertime. And then Grandpa was a master carpenter for doctors and lawyers back in Pennsylvania. So he also had a lucrative job up there in the wintertime. Besides doing beekeeping. I think that's also one of the things that after a while, when the bees, when my grandfather stopped doing as much in the bees, that's kind of what he slid into, is doing his master craftsmanship and that, and then doing the truck farming again, like his dad did. But my dad, I think, took over 1961 or 63, I think, from my grandfather. I don't know how the passing. Dad never talked about how the passing of that went down to him, because obviously Ron, you also got in the bees not too far after that. I don't.
Well, I'm 10 years younger. Yeah. I'm another 10 years younger, and I was nowhere near as smart or hardworking as your father. So I was just kind of like, being dragged along into the whole thing, just kind of to humor, I think, more than anything else. But with your father, he actually did basically run everything in Florida. He worked for other beekeepers, and while he was young and starting out, and he wanted, I think it's just brilliant to work for other commercial beekeepers because it gives you an opportunity to see how other people do things. So he met up with a few people from Wisconsin, a few people from Florida, and worked for them. Learned a lot more that way. But 1955, that's new to me. I would have thought it was a little bit later, but I wouldn't know because I was born in 54. And I do remember my father disappearing when I was just a little kid. That'd be your grandfather, disappearing to go, on long road trips. But I always thought he was out looking for girls. I had no idea it was all about beekeeping. So this is really interesting for me. Yeah. And I bet migrating must have been really different in those days, even for your dad, in the 60s.
So a little bit for what Dad would mention, didn't Grandpa made like a homemade RV out of an old school bus for everybody trying to migrate at one time, and I guess that would be a lot different, back in that 1950, 1960s. 50 to 60, yeah, a lot of things were different. A lot of vehicles were different. I don't know.
Folks in Florida, your father would probably have told you this, but these were Yankees coming down, and even though your grandfather was a first generation American, it still would have felt like they're from the North. And here they are coming down with bees and putting them in our backyard on our grows. So there was some of that going on.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of building a reputation for yourself in a new place to know that, hey, he can fit in here, or that family and that artistry of beekeeping can fit in here, and we can work together. And they got honey, we got send out that sweet stuff and make friends. So.
Well, when Dad first got there, didn't he say that one of the farmers or ranchers said something about how he was much happier with Dad's stock line, that the black bees that were there were a lot meaner, and when the genetics that Dad brought in came into the area, he said that the bees got nicer?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah, having presence of commercial beekeeping even today is still a necessity down here in the South for managing aggressive strains of bees. But yeah, that was even back then in the 60s, 50s, 60s, that was a mention. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
Your grandfather directed me when I was about 19 or so years old to go to South Carolina and meet Senator Graham, not the current Senator Graham. This would have been just before his time, but there was a Senator Graham in South Carolina along the PD River, and that guy had a lot of tobacco, but it was mostly for buildup, like you were saying earlier. Take the bees to South Carolina. What I did is I took bees from Florida and parked them in South Carolina for a few weeks because Florida would start to dry up. Move them to South Carolina. What I'm getting at is this: my first trip there, the senator told me to go out and look at some bees that had been abandoned next to like a overgrown bramble, blackberry, gallberry, just a 2 hives of bees there. And he wanted me to check to see that they were still alive and if anything could be done for them or anything. That was my first and only experience with what is usually called the European black bee. And they were so amazing. Like I knew, even as a kid, I knew what I was looking at. And I really wish that I had followed through or, told somebody about the stock being there. I just checked them out, reported back, and then forgot about it at the time. But what was really cool was they were a little more aggressive, but you pull out a frame and it was like water dripping off the comb. These bees just moved everywhere. They didn't just sit there on the frame while you're looking at it. They were just kind of, and they were jet black. They were really black bees. I didn't get stung up, but it might have been just lucky. It might have been the day, and that things were kind of glued together a bit too. But that was the same location that your grandfather had used for a number of years too. And I was only there a couple of years. It's just more of a nuisance to stop than it would have been to just keep going north with bees. So I just had to try it. But
it's interesting, Ron.
Yeah.
your older brother went south and you went north.
Oh, I went south too. I followed him. I learned how
Okay.
to raise queens from their father. Yeah. Yeah. He was a fantastic queen breeder. And a good part of it is being a very, very organized person. And that was one thing I remember about him is he was just focused. Like he could just, he could find a queen faster than anybody. Maybe you guys are faster than him. I don't know. But, I would be standing there. He'd be pulling a frame out that he'd hold up to me and say, okay, you see the queen? No. Come on. The queen's right there in front of you. Oh, yeah, there she is. No, that's not her. He was really, really focused. Like he could just concentrate. And that and being really well organized. So you guys then grew up in this family. You saw all of this stuff going on. Both of you in Florida. Monica, you left Florida when you were, I don't know if I know. How old would have you been?
When I came to Arizona?
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, Ted, how old was I?
You're probably 18. It was like 19.
It was 94. I was old than 8.
It wasn't too long after. Well, yeah, you stayed in Florida a little bit after you graduated. That's right.
Yeah.
You got married in 93,
95.
95.
Yeah,
So you moved in 93.
94.
94. Okay, 94.
Yeah. Yeah, I was probably early 20s is what I would say is when I moved out to Arizona. But you were talking about the queens and spotting the queens. Ted, did you get a quarter a queen for allowance?
That was a big incentive. Yeah, we were trained very early, and a quarter was a big deal.
Find queen.
Oh, yeah.
Quarter could get you a lot. Yeah, you tallied
yeah.
them up quick. But you had to be faster than dad or anybody else, or mom. You had to be
Because
faster
they'd grab it before you would.
Oh, but you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't know it.
Look up and you had to look at your frame and their frame practically at the same time and be able to if you wanted to get a good paycheck that yard. So yeah, it was fun times because as they were lifting their frame up, we were looking at ours, but we were also looking at the back of theirs because in the mating nukes they would be we'd be facing each other kind of thing. So yeah, that was the funnest thing, and I think that's really taught us how to get really fast at finding the queens. There was a monetary compensation for finding them.
I guess so. That sounds
You know
really, really cool.
When I first started beekeeping in my first year, the first ever frame that I ever pulled out of a nuke box, a 5-frame nuke box, so about 10% chance of this happening. And there was about 24 boxes that we were looking into, and it was the first one that I looked into. I picked the first frame out of the furthest side of the box, and there was the queen. And ever since that, I haven't been able to find her. It was all by accident. And then now I try to intentionally find her, and it's such a struggle.
You got to have a quarter. Yeah, you have somebody giving you a quarter.
Yes. I guess so. Was it still worth a quarter in profit when they raise a queen?
Oh, there's inflation on stuff. I don't know. I haven't really done that with my kids. I just tell them they get an hourly rate, and they better, they got to do a good job at all the jobs that are in the bee yard. So I guess I think I gotta drop that. Maybe I should bring it back.
Yeah, but Dad and Mom taught us though that each of the mating nukes had to be in great health because that increased our chances of getting a quarter next time. Like if they weren't in really good health, then the queen might not take, and we always were also taught kind of like I was telling Mom this the other day or I think Mom, but one of the beekeepers out here the other day, I said, well, just pull a frame that has a lot of pearl brood in it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the stage right before it's capped, when they look like little pearls in the bottom of the comb. And, he never heard that term. So, and I think that might have been just something Dad was was that something Dad was using?
Well, I don't think just Dad, but different regions call it, like Georgia boys, I think sometimes they call it milk brood because it's everybody has, I think, sometimes a little bit different terms, maybe regionally or who they're taught from. Maybe that was something from the labs that the lab, maybe Dad did work a little bit in the lab. I guess we didn't talk much on touch base on any of that, but in the 60s, I think Dad was like 19 years old when he went to work for Cornell University in 11th grade, I think. He worked at Cornell. One of his would be like a guidance counselor nowadays knew that Dad's family was in the bee business, and that came to her office that they were looking for a tech for Cornell and in their bee research, and he went there for a summer to work. He learned a lot of things there. I think he even learned grafting there from Dr. Norman Gary at that time at Cornell. But from there, he also went to the USDA lab in Madison, Wisconsin. One of the reasons of falling in love with Wisconsin and the area and the honey flows at the time were much more lucrative. So when he got done with his schooling and wanted to run his own business, he had a little bit of knowledge of landscape on where he wanted to start his bee business. But his Madison Bee Lab, his friendships that he encountered throughout that time with Roger Morris. Roger Morris did a lot of magazines at the time. I think he was even head of the U.S. Was it what do we call it? Apiary division, like a head of the USDA apiary, and helped verify that the varroa mites were in the United States in the early mid 80s when that happened. So Dad's been involved in a lot of things through his youth, all the way through his life. Just turning 80 this year, he still is very active in helping even me make decisions here at the farm. Is like an advisor. But he's done a lot.
Yeah, the mentor, he's because even with the Africanized bees, I could call Dad and ask, because he worked with them a little bit with Emmett Harp. And then he went down and worked with Bob Miksa down in Brazil. He's had taste of the Africanized bees. So I could, even ask Dad, what his thoughts are when I had some situations out here. Dad could even mentor on that a little bit, so he doesn't have like a tunnel vision. He tries to learn everything, though. But if you were to ask him, he says that there's no experts in beekeeping, which he always, tries to, instill that in us. There are no experts. As soon as you think you know something, Mother Nature will prove you wrong, And so I kind of, when I'm teaching, I tell that to all the students. My dad taught me, there are no experts, and so you're just always learning.
Right.
I think that's absolutely true. That is true. Well, there are some experts, but after their second year of beekeeping, they begin to realize they don't know everything.
I never claimed to be well, I did maybe tell some people that they only assumed, so I never said anything about it.
Oh, don't correct them. No, if they want to think you're an expert, let it happen. That's for sure. Yeah. No, but Zena, you're on your way. You'll get there too. You'll be there. It's just, what we're talking about is a guy who grew up in bees, and 80 years later, he's still active with them and still learning. So, I think that's a really good message to kind of keep in mind. I wanted to ask you guys, go ahead, Monica, you have something.
So quick, I wanted to mention that Ted and I are not the only ones out of the 6 kids that work bees full time. There's 5 out of 6 of us are in beekeeping. So that's pretty amazing. I always point that out to people because, when you have a family farm or a ranch, a lot of times the kids, go off and don't come back to the family occupation. But we did. And I think it just was, the love of the bees and how we were taught.
So I think that's a good point. Yeah.
So a mixture of reunion must be this one-upsmanship of beekeeping stories.
Oh yeah. Just all one-upmanship. That's for sure. No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because out of the 6 kids, 5 are active in bees right now. like
Right.
either working on the farm or running their own businesses. Your brother Andy is running a big commercial outfit himself in just south of Orlando. And you guys at the main farm that your father started is just to the west, halfway between Orlando and Tampa, really, in that general area. And Monica, you're the only one who escaped Florida, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you miss that? You get back every year, don't you?
I do. I go back for Dad's birthday every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he was good enough to have a birthday in the middle of July, the hottest time of the year. So, yeah.
I get that taste of humidity and giant mosquitoes just to remind me of what I'm missing.
Yeah. 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 I kind of wanted to do a little more about the fact that you guys had a big family and that 5 are still keeping bees. And do you know if anybody ever had a serious allergy problem with the bees? Because I think that's one thing that beekeeping parents that are listening to us right now are kind of wondering, like, how do you keep your children from having, did they do anything special, or is it because they did not do anything special, or what do you think?
Whether there's science behind it or not, and there is some science behind it. When we were young, they made sure that when we're babies and growing to a certain point, for our immune system not to have a lot of venom on their clothes from the day's work. Always have clean clothes when we were younger, but as we got older and our immune system was getting stronger, we would get stung probably once a month. As they have our body used to that venom. None of us really were born with an allergy immediately. We do have friend beekeepers that their son was born with an immediate allergy, and he went through a desensitizing program, and now he's working side by side with his dad and his brother in the bees. So, that's I don't know if
So
Monica.
So this individual was born with a bee allergy, and then after going through a series of desensitization, now they're able to work freely with bees.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know exactly how it goes, but I guess you're being exposed to smaller amounts of bee venom and incremented up slowly, so then your body doesn't go into a shock, the anaphylactic shock of the allergy. So then you just build that immunity up towards the venom, kind of like a lot of other venoms too, really.
Because I've heard that with getting stung with bees, your immunity will go down instead of going in. Like your immunity to bee stings will go down. Like you become like the toxicity builds up. But I guess you're saying that if done properly, it can actually cure a bee allergy.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think
Wow, this is not.
I think the case is, go ahead.
No, I just
It's not
like
what you
they never
expected?
really talk about this. People never really talk about this in the beekeeping community.
No, and they should. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
We had a couple allergists from the University of Arizona come speak to our bee club, and I'm not 100%. They were telling me some information like, certain times of the year a sting might be a little bit different for our bodies. That a different location, might swell more than another location, kind of thing. But they were trying to tell me that if you have 250 honeybee stings a year, then you will never have an allergy. But that's the secret number. And I'm like, okay, where's this information? I'd like to see who volunteered for that. But I would have to say that, and who counts, when they're out in this field, kind of thing. But I mean, I guess, yeah.
Is it 265 throughout the year, or like in a
250 for the year, yeah, throughout the year. So I got I had a really bad bee removal, and it was like I don't even know how many times I got stung. The person that was helping me, they're saying, "Oh, you're saying ouch a lot," and I go, "Yeah, I keep getting stung," and as I just go ouch, ouch, ouch. And so she said you had to get stung over 30 times tonight. And she goes, "Are you sure you're going to be okay?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." And I didn't swell up at all. But you know, it's like I don't remember the first time I was stung, but I have photos of it from mom and dad's, the photo album scrapbooks um I have, as a little, down in diapers, running through the queen rearing shed, with bees flying all over, with no veil, no suit, no jacket, no nothing,
And no
just
shoes, no
and
shoes.
no shoes, just running through. And then, and they're taking a picture, running. Oh, look at little Monica. And then the next photo is a giant swollen eye because I got stung in the eye, So, and then they had the next photo is me with a veil running through the same spot. So it's like you can play, you can like play it like a little book, but it's really cute. But still, I mean, I don't think it's something. I don't know. Ted, do you think mom and dad were thinking about that?
What's that?
That, yeah, the allergies and not having it on our clothes when we handled the babies?
Yeah, well, yeah, they talk about it now. I have a little 8-month baby at home. We talked about it this year to try to keep from having my bee clothes on while I go home and hold her. I tell Beth, I said I can't hold her yet. I got to wash up, and that's why.
Well, maybe they were just yelling at me to go wash
I
up.
think it's kind of like, I think it is, if they're exposed to it and then they're dropped the exposure,
Yeah.
then that kind of allergy is created. So I guess even now, if I don't clean every time, but I have to hold her every a lot more with that venom on me, maybe she won't get an allergy either. But I don't want to test that theory yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we're not trying to dispense any medical advice to anybody out
No.
there. You have to figure out your own way with your own kids if that's, something that you want to have them involved in the bees. But I think from the little I know about it, what you said last there, Ted. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to want to sneeze here. No, maybe not. Okay.
So
Okay. What you said last there, I know it's coming. So when you see spit coming flying out towards the camera, you'll know what happened.
the good effect.
The longer a period of time you have between stings, then your body builds up an antigen response that's stronger. If you get stung 250 times a year, but it's like every other day approximately, then you're probably right. You'll never have an allergy from the bee stings.
Makes sense.
But to go, we have a problem up here because our beekeepers don't get stung for 4 or 5 months, and their kids don't get stung for 4 or 5 months. So there is that opportunity for things to build up. So I think we probably have more people with allergy issues in the bee industry in Canada than you would have in your warm climates where you are. But this is interesting. I really appreciate hearing that. And
I just have a comment about you did experience, you're not getting swelling and stuff like that. But what about pain tolerance? Did you notice that over time, as you were getting stung more, your pain tolerance to these stings were getting less, meaning they didn't hurt as much? And not just because you were used to them, but you actually genuinely, like the stings weren't really doing anything to you anymore.
Oh, they still hurt. I don't know.
Okay.
Did they still hurt, Ted?
I think they hurt probably about the same amount. I think your attitude towards the bee getting stung, especially commercially, when you got A to Z to do yet that day, you. My sister, my partner Martha, she'll be pulling stingers out of my hand that I don't even feel anymore, just because it's out of your mind that you just had this work to complete. Where do I get under the finger? It'll be some stings still yet will stop you for a good 5 minutes, to get over it under the fingernails, especially, and soft spots. Right. So
And have you ever had stingers get embedded into your skin, not realizing that they're there, and the skin overgrows it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's for in the spring I get more of it. I actually get little red dots all over my fingers. Me and my mom get it the most. It must be ours. They're like blood blisters from bee stings. We get stung so much. And then every once in a while, a fraction of that stinger gets left under the skin, like you said, and it'll fester and sometimes be something that you have to take a needle to and relieve. Um, I've had quite a few. Every year I'll be doing that. Every year I've done that.
It started to show up, around the second or third year for me, and I was really confused what they were until I realized when I pulled one out. Like, I decided to just use a little scapula and then cut my skin open and just pull it out, and I realized it was a stinger. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm not sure if it's more after getting calloused hands that you don't know it's there as much, and then when it starts working in your skin.
Right.
That's when you notice that over time. Also, you're like, wow, there is something under there, under that callus.
I think that's certainly a factor to be aware of for people, so they know what they're getting into. But one of the things that I think you kind of mentioned there, Ted, is the fact that you know what's coming with the bees. And probably for a lot of new beekeepers, there's the constant fear of the sting being really, really bad, and wanting to be, extra cautious and maybe get stung just once or twice. But once you've been stung, now for both of you, it's in the thousands of times. But once you've been stung frequently, often, you don't have any fear. Like, it's not like I'm going to die, or this is all his worst pain, and oh no, there's another one coming. It's going to get in my hair. What's going to happen? Like, there's nothing of that sort, and I think that reduces the pain a lot, because there's that anticipation of pain, and it's just not going to be there.
Well,
for you guys.
Yeah, I have a story for Ted, that I think it was a couple years ago when I was out with them caging queens, and Ted grabbed an old bee veil. He couldn't find his regular one. He grabbed an old one, and it had this huge hole in it. I mean, giant hole, and he was wearing it. And I said, Ted, you have a huge hole in your veil. And he goes, shh, don't tell the bees.
Good point.
Yeah,
as long as you don't think about it. Yeah.
Well, it's if they once they figure it out, they figure it out. But it takes them a while to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, I think it's more the person. If you forget that you have that hole, then you're not constantly trying to, keep it covered or worried about it or whatever. But go ahead.
This just reminded me of a story. I have I bought myself a nice beekeeping suit for my second year of beekeeping, and I had one of my friends join me to help me with beekeeping. So I let him wear the nice suit, and I wore the old one, and I let him hold the smoker to smoke while I do the work. And there I am doing the work, and he's mesmerized by what's going on in the beehive, and he has the smoker, and it's a little bit cold outside, so I guess he liked the warmth, and he had it placed right on his private parts, just smoking away, just billowing, and then he looks down, and the entire area is it's filled with holes. I still have that beekeeping suit. I wear it sometimes, and bees they have gotten in a couple times, but it's such a funny memory. He almost burned his private parts.
Mhm. Yeah. I remember, this is a family show, so I'll just say it really quickly so that people don't really stop and think about it too much. But your grandfather always told a story about when he was working with bees, and the apple orchard owner came up to him and said, "Man, you get stung all over your arms. I saw one on your neck. What if you get stung down there? What do you do?" And Grandpa says, "Well, I go home and show my wife." Okay,
Okay.
so back to little children again.
Okay.
You guys have parents who were migratory beekeepers when you were quite young. So that meant that they owned property and lived in Wisconsin during the summers and in Florida during the winters. And if I remember correctly, Wisconsin was the bigger element in this for quite a while. For like 3, 4, 5 years, that everything depended on getting good bees to take to Wisconsin to make that big honey crop. And you guys would have to stay up there through the fall extracting, getting everything ready, and then the bees would be loaded up on semi-trucks and hauled back down south to go to Florida. So you guys tagged along. You rode in the semi?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fondest memories. In fact, I wanted to be a truck driver because of those semis. Dad had 2 different ones over our childhood, and I remember that when it sat, when the machine sat too long, you had to go run it every now and then, and so Dad would load us up into the sleeper and take us to the stretch truck stop in Fond du Lac, so that we could have coffee with all the truck drivers. And here there'd be like a line of kids lined up, and that's still my favorite coffee is I have to order Torque coffee because of that memory.
Oh.
Yeah, I loved the semi trucks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you would sometimes be in those trucks for days on end as you were traveling between the north and the south.
Oh yeah. And mom said that as a little baby, at night my cradle was the windshield area and the dashboard was the cradle because I fit perfectly in there as a little teeny baby.
And the safest place to be in a truck is lying there right up against the windshield.
This was at night when they were sleeping, taking a rest. So yeah. But yeah, I've had some, Ted, do you remember a lot with the semi or no?
Actually, I remember going to Ron's in Val Marie with Dad. I remember going there. I remember a lot of things at Ron's old house in Val Marie. I remember the trip back home because Dad picked up a very beautiful candles for Mom as a gift, and I thought it was such a beautiful feeling to take my fingernail and rub down. And I ruined the darn candle. I got in trouble. So I remember that. I definitely remember that.
I remember that trip. You guys coming up too. You brought the semi up. Yep, you were maybe 4 years old or so.
Yeah,
you're quite young. Yep. So when you mentioned Val Marie, for people who don't know, that's a small town in southern Saskatchewan, just north of Montana. So to get there, you guys had to drive from Wisconsin through Minnesota, North Dakota, a good chunk of Montana, and then slip north up into Canada, to Saskatchewan, where I kept bees and I had my own farm there. And that was pretty cool times. I certainly remember you coming up there, and we had a great time too.
A lot of memories from Migratory for me, and quite a bit from probably Monica too, is how we had all traveled together in a large-sized club van, 15-passenger van, and us 6 kids in different places, and all the luggage, sometimes our pets, stopping at truck stops, old-style diners and everything like that, but sleeping underneath the seats and fighting over spaces. We had a couple different variations of vehicles throughout time. We did graduate up to an RV. This is after Monica and a few other siblings had left the nest, and Dad and Mom were able to afford an RV at the end of our migratory years. But yes, Wisconsin was huge for us for making honey. That was our main lucrative income, was Wisconsin. Up to about 1983 is when beekeepers in the South here in Florida was noticing my father producing queens and queen cells, and that it was beneficial for them to also purchase them. And that was when our queen operation really kind of got attraction and popularity here in Florida first. And we didn't have the capabilities of shipping a lot and everything like that. But here in Florida, like you also mentioned a little bit, was that Florida is a build-up area to build numbers back to go to Wisconsin to make that big honey crop. We did have orange blossom at the time, and we utilize that to produce more bees and sometimes make some honey from that, and sell those queens from those nukes that created those massive amount of hives to go back to Wisconsin, all by hand at that point too. We didn't have a skidster or bobcat until it had to been late 70s, early 90s when we got our first
had a
skidster.
enclosed flatbed that he built like a cage to load all of the Illinois on. How would you explain that to everybody?
I guess it would be a full-size semi-trailer. It would look similar to a cattle hauling trailer, but it was completely screened in between each framing of the truck. So then it's just a screen. There was no moving screen to put over top of the beehives. And then along the whole side of this truck were little doorways to put the single-story beehives in to stack them inside that I guess it covered wagon in a way.
We stacked
but
like bales by hand. Yeah, stacked like bales.
Yeah, it was designed by hand. Yeah.
Yep.
Loaded by hand. That was
By hand. Yeah.
that was called the Armstrong method.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to have strong arms, the Armstrong method of loading your bees to go migratory. So he would take them north as single stories in Illinois depth. That's the 6 5/8 inch boxes. And that would be the nuke, the hive that would start. And then I suppose within a few weeks, he had the second and third brood chamber on and then piled on the supers in July.
Yeah, so he would leave. It was kind of heartbreaking. A little kid, dad's leaving dad's leaving. So every time the semi we got loaded, we knew we weren't going to see dad for a couple weeks. But he would try to be up there about Mother's Day every year to those starter hives for that honey crop in July. He would put another super or two on there. We would have very good at the time dandelion flows for buildup. Was a perfect flow at that time of the year to build up population for July honey production of clover, alfalfa at that time, and basswood, and other various plants. So I can't remember maybe what the average pound per hive at the time when they started, but I know now it's probably Wisconsin's honey flows have diminished quite a bit. You'd probably be in the range of 90 to 120 pounds annually per hive in Wisconsin now. And I may be off on that, but it's really...
In those days, he could produce close to 180 pounds from a lot of the hives, not every year, but in good years. But like you say, now it's about half that in Wisconsin. Farming has changed so much. I mean, they used to have farms in Wisconsin where alfalfa was raised for these small dairy farms, and some farmers would cut it as soon as they could, and then it would come back for a second bloom, and other farmers were a little slow. They didn't get their equipment wasn't working quite right, and the stuff would bloom and bloom and bloom until they cut it. But then by then, the better farmers had already had a second bloom coming. So you could have a good alfalfa, sweet clover, and Dutch clover flow going on for the whole summer. Plus, I think the climate was a little different. I remember the humidity in Wisconsin being incredible in the summers there, and the honey would just flow in. So then he built the hives up on the flow, made his honey crop, and they came back south. Do you remember if they came back in double stories, Illinois, or 3 stories?
I'm remembering them. I want to say they came back at 3 stories.
Mm-hmm.
I especially back when we first started integrated into having that bobcat skidster, we were strapping the hives down to pallets, and I want to say there were 3 stories high at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That was before the nowadays the hive clip pallets that we see custom today in commercial beekeeping.
Right. Well, whether they were 2 or 3 isn't as important as the fact that they came back with more boxes per hive than they went up, and then they would be split in the spring again. So you could take Right. You could take 500 hives or 1,000 hives south and split in half. And as you just said, by about 1983-ish, you guys weren't the only ones who were wintering in Florida, splitting hives and moving them north. And, you know, a lot of people have different skill sets. A lot of people have other jobs. So it became common for these big commercial beekeepers to bring a couple thousand colonies of bees south and let them sit for the whole winter. And then in the spring, all they want are queen cells or queens, and they don't want to be there raising them. And their skills aren't as good as what your families were like or are. Like raising that many queen cells and getting good queens off is not a trivial matter. So these beekeepers then start buying off of you guys.
Yeah, creating a dad and mom created a really good reputation for us very early on. Like you said, dad's meticulously organization, everything like that, followed through, and the quality and the reason how we got quality queens through the feed, managing the hives, how to manage them to create good, healthy, well-fed young. It'd be equivalent to having a mother taking prenatal vitamins, making sure she stays healthy to have a healthy as possible baby. There are babies. We really try to do our best.
Right. Right. And you're consistent and you've been there so long. I mean, it's your father since 63. It's about 60 years of raising queens.
Yes, exactly. He's probably grafted his own hand well over 1 million queen cells with his own hand very easily. He and he's very fast at that. Some people like when they come in here and visit, and dad's very you say, if somebody comes to visit and he's grafting, he will graft, and people think that he looks like a sewing machine needle. That's how fast it goes, and he can be talking to them and grafting at the same time, but he's very focused on what he's still focused, but yet giving his time to people around him, customers and whatnot.
So Ted, every year you said you graft about 19,000 queens, or that's how many that get bred.
We sell about 18,000 bred queen bees annually.
Right.
We start here in Florida. Actually, we've started grafting last Saturday for some early, really strong hives down here in Florida. See, we've had our maple flow, our red maple. This is not like sugar maple that's up that makes maple syrup up there, but our red maple started about 3 weeks ago here. So our climate startup is good enough to start. We have drones too. I should say we have mature drones, so mating will be fine. And we have to watch this every year. You watch for different environmental triggers, and so you know when the best time to start to have the best quality queens come out of that.
Right.
We're going to go from end of January. So let's say first week of February to middle October is our production time period for 18,000 mated queens.
And what sort of operation are you managing to to have 18,000 queens ready? Like, how many beehives are you guys managing?
Well, Betsina, I think we're going to get Ted back if he's available. And we'll go into detail with raising queens and how he manages them, how he grafts, and so on and so on. That'd be really an interesting episode all into itself. So if we could just hold that question, write it down.
I was gonna go. What I was gonna ask, I was just gonna go somewhere with that, but sorry. Yeah. So where I was gonna go with, just I guess maybe if you can answer this question is, do you have is your operation like you have your own bees, and like you're not buying, like you have a sustainable apiary, like they're replenishing itself.
So I think the question for that are you questioning the sustainability. It's just rotating yourself.
It's not the sustainability, but is it possible to have an operation where you're not needing to buy bees from anybody else? You have your own queen, you have your own bees, and these are just going and going and going for decades.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do in-house selection, breed your own bees for your localized area, select for anything your honey production. Even Chinese, they select for royal jelly production. So yeah, you can do in-house. You can do everything within an operation and sustain your numbers for what you need for, and that's a lot of commercial beekeepers is to sustain the numbers so you're there again next year. You're making enough money to succeed.
And this chain reaction, once you get it going, it's the domino effect. You can.
It's like a nuclear bomb. Nuclear bomb, Bettina. Yeah, you just have to stand back because it's gonna explode on you. We only have about 20 more minutes left here because I know it's getting really late down there for you. Ted, how many minutes does it take you to drive back to where you're living right now?
Not too long, but right now I have the truck and trailer out back. Right out the door, I gotta move some bees in for cell builders for tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So we don't.
You're not holding me up because our traffic in Florida is become such a pain. I'd rather move bees in the middle of the night so I can evade the traffic to come home. So I got a 45. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I would have done it if we didn't do this tonight. I would have done it at the same time, anyways.
Okay. But we'll just keep you another 15 or 20 minutes now. And I do want to focus more about what it's like growing up in a beekeeping family. And we covered a lot of really cool stuff here. Got really nice background on your family and, what you're doing. And we'll get you guys back in again to get more detail on doing Africanized bee cutouts in Arizona and rearing hundreds of thousands of queen cells in Florida. But let's go back to being a kid on a bee farm. Now, I know you got your 25 cents for each queen you found. Do you feel like that was, there's people argue about whether to pay children for participating in family business or activities or whether they just do it because they're part of the family. And was that a good incentive? Or would you have like, how do you feel about that now?
Oh, I thought it was a wonderful incentive because it also taught us money management skills, as well. Both mom, they taught us, actually growing up, Martha remembers things a lot differently than I remember things because I was born in early 70s. So I was like right there practically, right in the beginning with mom and dad and as a baby. And they were very frugal with everything that they did. And when they had to, when they needed something, they would scrimp and save in order to get it. And I think one year, and I don't remember if it was because dad was buying another beekeeper out, I think. And so he had to go down to his last penny in order to buy this other beekeeper out in order to expand his operation. And I remember we really, and we had just got down to Florida. There was no, dad grew almost everything we ate. I mean, he had gardens like in Wisconsin and in Florida. And we had, pretty much all the vegetables and fruit we wanted. We traded a lot with the farmers we worked with. But I remember this one time, dad was scrimping and saving so much that we only had like a can of soup and a loaf of bread kind of thing. And it was, I am proud of that because that taught me, you have to prioritize in order to move ahead in life. And so, there's just all these things that they taught us. I wouldn't change, working in the bees when I was little for anything. And I think everybody should have to, go out on the family farm. And actually I've had, families here in Arizona ask me to take some of their kids, just for like a weekend and, put them to work on my little 14 acres just so that they get a taste of, hard work, labor work, instead of just living inside the city limit.
That's right. That's really great. What a good memory too, to have had that, and actually to be able to look back and say that was pretty cool and that helped you out.
Yeah.
Were there times when you were, say, a preteen or a teenager where you thought what your parents did was a little bit weird, and that not, so many of the other folks, kids in your schools and so on, their parents had, like they were a banker, or they drove a truck, or they had a different kind of lifestyle, but you guys had a pretty weird lifestyle, really. You're running your own, building your own business from scratch, from nothing, and you're traveling. That was a big chunk out of having homes in two different parts of North America. So did you act out when you were a kid? Because I've got some very sultry pictures of Monica sitting on a couch, kind of looking like.
Well, yeah. I mean,
So,
like, you had friends that you were leaving, in Wisconsin.
oh,
The
yeah.
first part of the I think, well, they call it a semester. It's been so long since I was in school. I went to a school up there and made friends, and just as soon as you're fitting in, then you got to go move to Florida again, where got to get a start over, basically. But when you think back at it, I think it was really great because it made you a more of a people person. You had to learn those skills in order to blend in, and I remember, I think we arrived practically about the same time as, was it the migratory workers for orange picking? I remember, like, some of my friends were their families had just arrived too, for working like orange groves or something.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, it was kind of funny because I was more in that migratory
Oh, yeah, yeah,
kid. Is
yeah.
kind of how the Florida school system
Hmm.
saw, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Ted,
yeah.
did you go? So you said, you only went to school one time up in
Yeah, I only went to like 9 weeks in the ninth or to the fourth grade, and but I still, like you mentioned, that friendship thing. You knew everybody had plans for the summer when you let. For me, leaving summer, everybody had plans to go on the beach and stuff like that, or something silly. Now looking back, it's more silly, but then it wasn't. Like you wish you could went and did that. But then when you got up to Wisconsin, there's other things that then just sparked the adventure of it again, sparked something different. It didn't last long that you felt bad that you were leaving your friends, because there was something else. It was filling that.
yeah.
And the
I think.
value of paying the children. I tell my kids to, or if somebody says no, please don't pay me. I said, but the value of you being willing to do this for me is enough for me. But you're valuable, that you should be paid for your time. I think that's kind of
Nice.
on the page
Yes,
of paying somebody for a
that's
child.
really nice. I like that idea, and I also want to add that for children of migratory families, and yours was somewhat migratory, in the most important thing, I think, is that the parents are around,
Yeah.
and like that's really helpful. So when you guys were traveling, everybody was going, all the kids were going, everybody was going, so you had that unit. That's where kids kind of need to know that they can trust their mom, their dad. Even just doesn't matter so much where you're living, as long as you've got folks around that you can depend on. So that's useful.
Yeah.
That's really
Now,
good.
I have a question for Monica and Ted, which whenever you'd like to answer first. Um, was there ever a period when you were, maybe around the teenage years, when you're 16, 17, maybe even later on, or whenever it happened, like where you felt that you hated beekeeping, and you hated that your family's in beekeeping, and then this is why, like, you were just kind of cursing God to why did you put me in a beekeeping family? Was there ever moments like that?
I don't think there was like cursing that you were born into something. There was a curiosity. I had a moment that I wanted to be a movie director, and I went to see the university of one university, and I started to look around at the demographics of people I would be working with, and I passed on that dream, and then like I mentioned a little earlier, I did have 2 years though when I was older in my early 20s. I think I stopped doing bees for 1 or 2 years and stayed in Wisconsin for that time. And it wasn't that I hated it. It was a matter of if I'm going to do this it's going to be my whole life if I continue. And I knew it would be, and I wanted to see if I took a break to see if that's what I was going to do.
Oh, that's a smart idea. That's a really good idea, because you would never know if you hadn't tried what it's like not to be around the bees all the time. So this was great. And Monica, you didn't move directly from Florida to Arizona in order to become a beekeeper.
No. So, as a teenager, I wanted to move to New York City, and I wanted to be an interior designer. I had plans, and I had long nails, and I wore high heels, and I went that girly route for a short period of time. And then I was doing some after school and stuff. I wanted to just not do beekeeping. So I went into like waitressing, and then I got a job as a vet technician. And so as a vet technician, I was opening the clinic up like at 6 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes not leaving until 8 at night. So the doctor, after a few years, said, "Hey, you need a vacation. I'll give you a week's paid vacation in Arizona." So I moved out. I came to Arizona to hike the Grand Canyon and fell in love with the state. I met my husband, my now husband at the time also, and we had a long distance relationship. And so after our sister Joyce got married, I moved out here. So I moved out, and then I just worked with my husband for a period of time until it was something Dad said one year. And Dad was out here overlooking the mesquites, and he said something like, we were short X amount of bees, or X amount of queens last year, and he goes, "You know how to do it." And so I decided to try raising queens out here. And so I had 3 artificially inseminated pole line, and I raised Satan's spawn with the Africanized drones in the area. I did try to get drone saturation of the area. I was working with the local cowboys. We were doing removals from a 13-mile radius around my property. It wasn't working. It was so much work to try to get that drone saturation. I just said, if you can't beat them, join them. And then that's how I went into doing bee removals.
Wow. So you're the original bee lady.
The original?
Well, there's the famous bee lady from Texas bee lady.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
But Ron, I guess you could also answer the question as well. Like, did you ever feel where you did not want to do beekeeping, or you were just you didn't feel that you should be part of this?
Well, I just wanted to keep trying to keep bees until I finally got good at it, and that's why I'm still trying.
Well, you notice his radio voice down in Florida.
Yeah, I did have a job working on the radio in Florida. That's true. But that was only in the evenings, and it never substituted for beekeeping. And I always quit in April so that I could go north and take care of bees in Canada. So that was those days. And yeah, when I sold out my outfit in Saskatchewan, it was with the intention of changing careers and doing something different. I was just in my mid-30s. So I thought, yeah, I still have time to try something really, going from bees, being a beekeeper, it's just a natural step to go into geophysics. So that's what I did. So that was just the natural progression of things. But I don't think there was ever a time in my entire life from the time I was a little kid on the farm that I wasn't around bees, that they were somewhere. When I was going to university, I was still keeping 300 colonies of bees in northern Saskatchewan and being a student full time. And then when I got my job offers to move from Saskatchewan to Calgary, the first thing I did was found somebody with 6 hives of bees for sale and found somebody that I could put bees in their property because I was living in the city in order to do my job. And then I never really left bees for any significant, not for any amount of time, actually, as I would say.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I've definitely had my fair share. It's only been 5 years, but it's been an odd culmination of things. But maybe I'll talk about it with individually with Monica and Ted. We're kind of wrapping up here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We are kind of wrapping up because we do want to. Ted, I can't believe it. It's getting to be close to 10 o'clock in Florida as we're recording this, and you are going to be moving bees tonight.
Yeah, I'll be moving. Not many. I'll probably be moving in 40 hives for cell builders this Saturday graft.
Mm-hmm.
I would have had it done earlier, but I had to fix the trailer lights were bad
Ooh,
on the
yeah.
truck, so I had to do that too before
Yeah.
moving the bees. So
Yeah. Well, good luck with moving them tonight. Do you use a forklift when you move these 40?
yes, they're all going to be.
Yeah.
So there's an integrated. I do a lot by hand and a lot by depends upon what the application is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nukes by hand, hives by pallet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You taking one
It's
of
really-
the kids with you?
No, school night.
Mm.
School night.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday. That's right. It's a Wednesday today. Well, this has been really fun. I think I covered some of the questions, but is there anything that you want to add or anything you'd like to say on this, focused on the idea of growing up or other people who are going through the same thing and raising families that while they're running a business?
Well, I think that I might not have ever said it to mom and dad in the past, but I had the most wonderful upbringing possible. I'm very grateful for it.
That's really cool. That's great. Yeah. I know they tried their best. Mm-hmm. And in this case, their best was good enough.
All right. Should we wrap up here?
Are you
I think
guys?
it's a good ending.
That's a good place to stop. And I'm hoping that in the next month or two we could talk individually to Monica about the bees in Arizona and Ted. I know you're going to get busier and busier and busier, but if we can find another hour and a half at some point that we can pull you in, and it won't be as late in the evening either, if that works better for you, because in this particular case, Bedzina was in classes. And this was the time that worked, and I know that if I didn't go ahead and actually do this and said, well, just wait a week or two till it will never get done. And I kind of wanted to be able to do this partly because people who are listening know your parents and they know you guys, and it's just kind of a tribute to what it was like to be coming from that family. Around the year, between the 1990s and 2000, 2010, that kind of area, just what it was all about. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yep.
That
All
was
right,
great.
everyone.
Really great. Okay, so Bedzina, do you want to take this thing home?
Yes. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Join us next week at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for a fresh episode of Bee Conversation, or about bees, a conversation about bees. Thank you, Monica and Ted, and have a good rest of your evening.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.